Thursday, the 24th of June. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Barley,
Absent.
Connell, absent. Fisher,
Here.
Geib, Geib, Gilligan, Hudson, Reiser, Krikorian, Hutt.
Thank you, Darcy. Moving on, at this time, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of July 10th, 2000.
So moved.
Moved by Krikorian. Second. Second by Guy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes. Next up, we have Palmyra Pride. Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Putt. Got groups come up and join me as I announce you, and then I'll speak to you as you come up. Aiden and Tyler Mahaffey, please join us up here. Spring sports in Palmyra had a phenomenal year with every team advancing to district playoffs. These two gentlemen took what Palmyra tennis has been on the map recently, and they're taking it to the next level. I'm out here in some light where we can see them. These two gentlemen just finished their freshman year as brothers playing together, District 3 champions in AAA tennis. Okay? So highest division of tennis, AAA, freshman district champions. So on behalf of the board and administration tonight, we have certificates for you. If I get the correct one. Here we go. A certificate of recognition is hereby awarded to Aiden Mahaffey for winning the 2021 PIAA District 3 3A Tennis Doubles Championship, and the same for Tyler. Certificate of recognition awarded to Tyler Mahaffey for winning the 2021 PIAA District 3 3A Tennis Doubles Championship. And if I know anything about you two, it hasn't stopped. You've been on the court since districts ended, getting ready for next year. A full summer slate of tournaments, travel, etc. So on behalf of the board and administration, thank you for representing Palmyra Area School District and Palmyra Area High School so well. Congratulations. Thank you. I now know why I was out of order on my certificates, because I skipped down and missed our bus contractors on the first one. So who's out there? Kevin, Curtis, Candy, the whole crew. Any of you that want to come up as possible, our drivers. Actually, I'd like everybody to come up here after this year. Come up here. If you don't want to come up on stage, I get it, but you deserve the recognition to come forward. As our team of bus drivers and our bus contractors are making their way, I'll read the certificate and then I'll talk a little bit about them. This is a certificate of appreciation. It's hereby awarded to AP Buxton Sons Transportation and their staff of bus drivers for their dedicated and reliable service in safely transporting our students and for their flexibility in varied schedules due to the pandemic. When this year started, they knew about as much as we did in planning last summer. What was it going to be like? Are we going to have to drive a bus with a mask on? It was an unknown. is it safe to drive a bus with a mask on? This team did everything they could to meet the demands day in and day out of safely providing transportation for our students. I think, Terry's the first one beside me, drives the route that would bring my kids to school. Did you notice my kid got on the bus the last day?
I did.
Dad failed to talk to him about it. He get home the night before. The only day he got on the bus all year because we tried to transport him to help out and increase social distancing. Dad failed on his last day. My son rode the bus.
To see me.
It probably was. Probably was. But a good example, our drivers know our kids personally. They take care of our kids each and every day. And for Kevin, Candy, Curtis, and family, and all of our drivers, thank you truly for what you did all year long. So on behalf of all of us on the Board of Administration, I'll present this to Kevin and Candy. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Looks like Annette has some goodies, some Palmyra pride for you. And as our transportation team's making their way down, can Roman, Jake, Tony, and Xander make their way up here? As a former high school and college track athlete myself, yeah, I didn't run. You can probably tell by looking at me. I was a thrower, high school and college. Competed at the state meet. I know a little bit about track and field and what it takes to put a medal around your neck in Shippensburg in May. Come on up here. What these guys did throughout the entire year, truly amazing performances. Not just these five, but as a team. Distances, times, and what they put up day in and day out on the track is remarkable. Track practice pretty hard. Run, work, lift, year in, year out, day in, day out, all year, right? Distance running, when it's hot, when it's cold, and all of those things combined. But what they did at States, to medal on a track in AAA, Pennsylvania Interscholastic Track Meet in Shippensburg is amazing. And listen to what these guys did. So we'll talk a little bit about each one of them. Roman Weiler, 5th place in the 4x100 meter relay. So Roman, congratulations. Good job. Glad you guys wore your medals tonight. Jake Pusinek, 5th place in the 4x400 meter relay. Jake, congratulations. Great job. Tony Mansfield, 5th place in the 4x100 and the 4x400. He has 2 medals around his neck. Congratulations. Proud of him. Okay, I'm going to go to this one next. Fresh off the basketball court, right, to the track season. Hugh Townsend, Quentin Townsend, 5th in the 4x1 and 4x4. Congratulations. Great job. And Xander Topos, Topos, pronounce it right? Good, I can practice. Listen to this gentleman in the state track meet. 3rd place in the 110 hurdles, 7th place in the 300 hurdles, 5th place in the 4x100, and 5th place in the 4x100. A 4-medal day at the state championships. So, congratulations. A little insight, I can take a little more time on Palmyra Pride because it's the best part of the night. Typically, the state track meet's held over a couple days. So you run a preliminary heat one day, you might run another heat later in the day, and you come back the next day after a night's rest to run a semifinal heat or a finals heat. With COVID, the state track meet for AAA was held on Saturday alone. So how many races did you run in the 4x4, for example? You ran, oh, that's how they did a little differently. I thought that you had to still go through heat. So one race, and that was it. So it's tough in its own right that you had one shot. Sometimes you run in that preliminary heat, you don't run your best time, you qualify for the final, and you get to do it again, but one time, and you see the results. So on behalf of all of us, congratulations, we're proud of you. Great job.
Thank you, Dr. Kepler. Moving on to item, we have board resignation. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the resignation of Krista Barley from the Palmyra Area School District Board of School Directors effective June 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Guy? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the next. President's report. President Connell didn't leave me anything, but I'd like to mention that we had a closed session, executive session before the board meeting this evening for a personnel matter. Moving on to the next item, visitor comments. And before we begin visitor comments, I'd like to say first you have 5 minutes at approximately 4 minutes and 30 seconds. I will go ahead and give you a warning to go ahead and sum up your comments. But before we start, Dr. Kepler, would you like to make a few comments?
Sure. Just for folks' edification, so they know to stay through the end tonight. We noticed that 4 of the 5 topics that the public is asked to speak on tonight is that of masks for the upcoming school year. In staffing and administration session tonight, you'll hear a proposal, as will our board, that provides the recommendation that masks will be optional or voluntary for the fall. So I wanted you to have that insight before public comment.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kepler. First up is Kirsten Snyder. Is Kirsten here? Kirsten, right?
Yep.
Yep, okay. If you'd like to use the podium or. So whenever you're ready.
Hello and good evening. My name is Kirsten Snyder and I'm a student at Palmyra Area High School. When I first started high school, I was excited. I finally escaped middle school and was looking forward to flipping over a new leaf. The first semester of my freshman year was among my best throughout my entire school career. I made several new friends, got good grades, and was happy in general. The sad thing is, I was quickly reversed once COVID-19 swept the nation in terror. A microscopic virus was enough to ruin my high school experience, not due to the virus itself, but because of the way it was handled. It all started on the day before spring break. We don't know the next time we'll be in this building. It's a phrase from one of my teachers that still haunts me to this day. Then, on March 13th, 2020, the very next day, we received the first wave orders from our government. 2 weeks to stop the spread. It seemed promising at the time, but despite desperate cries of help from the citizens of Pennsylvania, that promise was largely ignored. Before we knew it, school closed indefinitely and we had to do COE, or continuity of education. COE, that's where it started to tumble downhill. I started pretty regular, as was the case with many, but it only got worse from there. If everybody wasn't guaranteed to pass, many would not have, because at that point, it felt like optional work. After all, why put effort into learning when you could be doing anything else at home? And we can't forget about seniors, who got robbed of the vast majority of end-of-year festivities. Prom, senior trip, and even graduations, though before we knew it, were all canceled by a microscopic virus with a death rate less than 0.1%. Hopefully we'll be back by May, is what they said. Once again, many were disappointed by the way things were handled. Fast forward to around August of the same year, when we received confirmation that we would be in school. Granted, if your last name started with Z and your best friend started with A, good luck getting socialized being split by your last name. Doing this ruined social lives of many, as students' last name from A to K went on A days and L to Z on B days. I was one of the few fortunate enough to go every day. Not to mention, the quality of learning was severely reduced due to masks and social distancing. Many classes, aquatics for example, are unable to cover some material due to most students being split and teachers having to reteach the same material. Music classes were especially hit hard by this. Could you imagine trying to produce any sort of vocal sound with a piece of fabric on your face, smothering you as you're desperately trying to get enough oxygen? This was just your average morning for myself and every other student in choir. All this was going on while the majority of students were going through problems with online learning, developing anxiety, among many other mental illnesses, and failing in record numbers. I failed my first 2 classes in my entire school career thanks to the side effects of having a mask. The constant lightheadedness and headaches as a result of breathing in carbon dioxide by third period, alongside dehydration due to not having access to normal water fountains. But that's fine, because in the wise words of administration, you just aren't doing your work. Wow, it's almost like when our motivated to even try as a result of months of constantly having our voices shot down whenever we cried out for help. At this point, the mask feels like nothing more than a muzzle. All this, noticeable decrease in morale, the horrible changes made to the policies, and the incessant bugging that it's your fault has led me to hating school. My entire sophomore year, I dreaded waking up every day and going to the suffocation building in order to end this pain and suffering. I believe that we should no longer be required to wear masks in school or follow any code restrictions. And it's to the point now where I'm ready to go to an online charter if these unethical mandates persist. It was so painful this year watching the student body and staff alike turn from full of life as I know the year before to emotional husks or emotionless husks. That is all.
Next up, Sarah Sholey.
Hi, my name is Sarah Shawley. I have 4 children, 2 of which attend Forge Elementary School. First of all, I'm thankful to be a part of the Palmyra School District. I'm especially thankful that we prioritized keeping our elementary school students in person as much as possible this year. I'm here to ask that we do not require masks, but instead give parents the option for the upcoming school year. My husband and I did not grow up in the Palmyra area, so we've been learning the school district along with our 2 oldest school-age children. And this past year, we faced our greatest and only challenge with our children in school. One of our children were so intimidated of their math teacher and felt such a social disconnect from their peers, we actually had to move our child to a different classroom. The staff at Forge were so understanding. They worked with us right alongside us to find the solution. We ended up moving our child to a classroom that was more familiar. They knew some of the students from the previous year, and we made it, but I have no doubt that my child would have had a much greater opportunity at success in that original classroom if those unfamiliar faces weren't masked and 6 feet away. The following I found from a medical journal on the study of the impact of COVID-19 on children's growth and development. It says, one of the pillars for overcoming adversity is interaction among people, which is compromised by isolation, leading to increased stress in both parents and children. And this same journal concludes, the COVID-19 pandemic has produced high morbidity and mortality rates within the global population, as well as risk factors for healthy growth and development among children. The increase in parental stress, the suspension of classroom activities, the social isolation measures, nutritional risks, children's exposure to toxic stress, especially in previously unstructured homes, and a lack of physical activities are some of the factors found in the literature. It's disappointing that we're studying this. This is where our research is going, when we could easily eliminate these factors by removing masks as well as social distancing. So if we require our children to wear masks and social distance again for another year, I believe we're teaching them to fear each other. Instead, they should return to interactive activities in school, and we need to prioritize the value of community. Thank you for your time.
Next up, Brian Craig.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone that's here for taking the time out of their evening to show up. And I want to thank all of you folks for taking the time to listen to us and hear our concerns. And I also want to thank you for considering a change in the mask policy. I really do appreciate that, and thank you. I would like to start off by reading a message from my wife who couldn't be here tonight. She's at the beach with our son. Reagan had her initial interview for kindergarten today. I couldn't tell if she was smiling when she talked to the staff, and she couldn't tell if they were smiling at her either. Facial cues are huge for little kids. Learning sounds and how to enunciate is part of the curriculum. But behind the mask, it will be difficult. I have ADHD, and based on some things we've encountered with Reagan, I suspect she does too. One of the ways this affects me is auditory processing. My hearing is fine, but for me to process and understand, I often need a visual. Reading lips helps me understand what is being said. You can't read someone's masked lips. Furthermore, in the history groups that I've joined, multiple mask members have come forward saying that wearing masks causes their condition to flare up. I may have initially been exposed years ago, but it's no coincidence that I became significantly sick after masking. The warm, moist, shallow breaths are like gas on a flame for a lung fungus. Telling these kids not to touch or mess with their masks is near impossible. They adjust them constantly, contaminating their hands and the things around them as well as their faces. The cons seem to outweigh the pros at this point. I would also like to add, I do want to say that we have 3 kids and 2 are going to be in school next year. One will be in kindergarten, one will be in 6th grade. Dorian received an IEP this year related to his ADHD. I don't think it would have been necessary without all the COVID related policies that he had to endure in school. He has auditory processing issues, so the mask caused problems there. He has a lot of extra energy. Not being able to play at recess and having to stay away from other kids hurt him. To get his IEP, he had to take a test, an IQ test. He scored, I believe it was 94%, meaning he's exceptionally intelligent. However, he failed almost half of his classes this year. He'd never failed a class before. I truly believe that this is not a coincidence, and it is very much related to the COVID policy. And we should not be putting our kids through that. We need to consider kids with ADHD and other learning disabilities when we are implementing policies like this. So again, I just want to thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Shona Show.
Good evening. My name is Shauna Shope. My husband and I live in the district with our 3 children who have been attending Palmyra for the last 9 years. Can't believe it. I'm speaking tonight to affirm the elimination of masks for the upcoming school year. But first, I do want to take this opportunity to publicly thank you. Thank you, administration. Thank you, school board, for getting our kids in the classroom this last school year. Thank you to the teachers and the support staff who fought through the most challenging year, probably ever, I would assume, for many. You brought the best year you could with the most challenging restrictions. Our family, we didn't really like the restrictions we faced, but we still chose to send our children to be in person because for us, it was important for our mental well-being to be in the classroom and around others. So thank you for all the hard work and lots of extra time you guys put in. Thank you also to all who made the outdoor education program possible for the 7th and 8th graders this year. I know this was a community and a school effort and worth every moment for these kids. We have 2 that were able to attend by including 8th as well, and their experience will not be forgotten. We were up late when we got them home hearing all the stories. All right, so as we look to this upcoming school year, it is my understanding, as Dr. Kepler said, that it will be recommended to the school board tonight to not require masks as part of the health and safety plan for this upcoming school year. I want to affirm that recommendation and join with the other parents, as you've heard tonight, to please make them optional for our staff and students. I will also add that I would also encourage the option of even the COVID vaccine too. These decisions are a personal one that need to be made individually and shall not discriminate against students or staff according to their personal health choice. My children each experienced different school years last year. One attended daily at Forge, 2 were on the hybrid schedule at the middle school, and we even tried the synchronous learning for 1 trimester. We had a first-time honor roll student who earned all 3 trimesters. We were so proud of that effort and hard work in a difficult year. But we also experienced struggles staying focused and motivated, challenges with feeling lonely and overwhelmed and friendless, not being able to build relationships with friends because they could not interact with each other as usual. You may see these as common kid struggles from year to year, but I'd like to remind us what we didn't get to see this year. We couldn't identify the students who were sad by that frown, the student who was confused by their puzzled lips, the student who was angry by their clenched jaw, the lonely student from that stoic look, the excited student from the smile and the dimples, the student who actually felt noticed by that small little smile appearing on their face. Or what about the ability for a teacher to show their student a smile to reassure them they've got this, they can do it? Lots more emotions to acknowledge, but I hope you get my point. Feeling faceless and emotionless was real and all around us. I know this was not just felt by my kids. I know this is the story of many children, and I am asking that we as a school district bring an end to this. We must stop this way of living. We will have failed this generation of children if we continue to let them grow up thinking that masking and social isolation are just a new normal. There has been plenty of time and opportunity for the community to take the necessary measures they feel are best for themselves. So let's get our children and teachers back to a more normal interactive classroom. No social distancing and socializing like kids and no social distancing. And they should be socializing like kids and teachers should be doing while attending school. I do have to just say this one thing. I asked my children if any of them wanted to speak to you tonight and share their thoughts. I had one child give more than a second thought to this, but in the end, speaking to a bunch of adults was just a little too scary, and I can't disagree with that. So Kirsten, good job. I know it comes better from the person themselves, and I am their mother, but if I can just add what you would have heard tonight from this child, it was that they wanted to tell you that wearing a mask makes it hard for them to breathe. So with that said, I ask you to please give the students and the teachers the ability to breathe freely again. I affirm the recommendation that's being recommended to move forward with masks optional, and I ask the school board to agree. So thank you for your time.
Next is Susan Lehman.
So first off, I want to say I am in agreement with all of those who spoke before me in terms of the masks and not having them be mandatory. I also think it would be best practice for the administration and teachers to just remind students not to other or denigrate students who choose not to wear masks or who choose to wear masks. You know, that it's a personal choice, and let's just make sure that we, emphasize that with the students. But I'm here to talk about the 1619 project. Are you guys familiar with that? It kind of surprises me that you're not. But it actually could be good news. But it kind of goes hand in hand with CRT. So the 1619 project was a series of essays in the New York Times a couple of years ago. And it basically says that the United States was not founded in 1776. The United States was founded in 1619, which was the year that the first slaves came to North America. And the problem with it, and it goes and says, you know, it taints everything. That led to lynchings, it led to Jim Crow. The problem isn't that those things didn't happen. Of course they did. And we need to not ever forget. But it only looks at the darkness, and it says everything is stained because of that. So there was darkness, and we need to not forget, but there was also light. From the beginning, there were people who fought for the light. So, for example, and most of the early people were Quakers. In 1700, Samuel Sewall wrote an essay called The Selling of Joseph, using the Bible to argue against slavery. In 1737, Benjamin Lay wrote a book, All Slave Keepers That Keep the Innocent in Bondage, Apostates. His book was printed by his close friend, Benjamin Franklin. In 1750, Anthony Benezet began evening classes for Black children in his home. He wrote the first publication to include eyewitness accounts of the slave trade. And there are many more. These were all people who were trying to light the darkness so that other people could see and follow. And their writings led to action. So even before the revolution in 1771, Massachusetts tried to ban the importation of slaves, but the bill was vetoed by the British governor. In 1774, the Rhode Island Assembly banned the importation of slaves. In 1780, after the Declaration of Independence, Massachusetts created its own constitution, and then the Massachusetts Supreme Court said that slavery was against the Massachusetts Constitution. In 1784, Connecticut began the abolition of slavery. In 1802, Ohio abolished slavery. And this is, I brought my bibliography, a wonderful book, The First Emancipation, the Abolition of Slavery in the North. So this is something that when you talk about things like CRT or the 1619 Project, they just don't talk about this. They don't talk about this. So, you know, it's like we're going to look only at the darkness, but you can't teach kids that way. If you don't show them the light and what to reach for, how do they know? And that's part of their history and their legacy. So the Constitution, the 1619 Project criticizes the Constitution, and I'm going to take this time, because I will take any time, any day of the week, to correct the fallacies about the 3/5 clause. I'm guessing you're familiar with the 3/5 clause in the Constitution. So the 3/5 clause is very commonly touted as the Constitution defining Black people as 3/5 of a person. It had nothing to do with that. In the Constitutional Convention, they had people who counted the votes, just like we do here. So it was about the census, it was about population, and the Southern representatives wanted to include slaves in the census to determine how many representatives they would have in Congress. So the Northern representatives said, you know, they did the math and they were like, the South is going to win every vote. The South is going to completely control Congress. So they went to the Southern representatives and they said, you can't have it both ways. You can't just go and say, on this one hand, we think they're property, but on the other hand, we want to count them as human beings in the census. So the 3/5 was the compromise they came up with, but it had nothing to do with how you view a human being. It was actually an anti-slavery effort. It was an effort to stop the slaveholding Southern states from having massive control in Congress. So,
about 30 seconds.
Huh?
About 30 seconds.
Oh, so, okay. So, another perspective is that the 1619 Project doesn't have, slavery's been around for 10,000 years. 10,000 years. This is slavery, a world history. And for most of that time, it was not considered, and nobody thought about whether it was moral or not. It was just a given. There are no ancient writings in Greece or Roman that talk about the morality or lack thereof of slavery. So to me, it's like,
Ms. Lehman, go ahead and wrap up, please.
okay, so, huh? Well, I don't want to make a fuss, but I don't know if since you don't even know what it is, I'm gathering you're not considering, but I think it should not be used anytime, anywhere. CRT or the 1619 Project. The US is full of human beings. You know, we're capable of great beauty. We're capable of oppressing each other. So we need to tell the full human story.
Could I just address
Thank you,
that?
Ms. Lehman.
Could I just address that?
Sure.
I taught in this district and I taught Western civilization, and American history for over 44 years. So I'm very much in agreement with a lot of the positive things that you've said about that. One of the things that I did when I was in the classroom is that I told my students, if you want to understand history, you have to put yourself in that historical period of time.
Yeah.
So that if you want to know about Jamestown, you have to think like somebody in the 17th century thought.
Mhm.
Or if you want to talk about Williamsburg, you have to put yourself in the 18th century.
Exactly.
And you've got to keep your 21st century morality out of it.
Yeah.
We should not be, condemning those people. I've heard so many times people condemn George Washington because he owned slaves. Well, take a look at the Southern aristocratic population of Virginia in the 18th century. I think you're going to be have difficulty to find somebody who didn't own slaves. That doesn't make Washington a bad person. I think we have to look at it in both perspectives. There is one thing I'm very much against, and this isn't going to happen in Palmyra because you don't get any place trying to make people guilty because of something that happened 200 years ago.
Mhm.
However, there is one positive thing that comes out of this 1619 program, because three things happened in 1619. The group that you're concerned about only want to deal with the slavery issue.
Mhm.
Well, another important thing happened was that women were brought to the colonists, and that meant that the men in Jamestown now had to sit down and really take care of the women and take care of the kids.
Mhm.
But probably the most important thing that happened in 1619 was the creation of the House of Burgess, which was the first representative assembly in the colony, and out of that, our system of government developed.
Mm.
So I think you have to be careful and condemn 1619 just if you think about slavery. You should. You think about the positive things that came out of it, about that as well. But again, let me say, the curriculum, any curriculum that takes place in this school has to first be proposed by the teachers, by the department heads, and then goes through the principal. It then goes through the assistant superintendent who's responsible for curriculum. And then there are public meetings. Rest assured, if a radical point of view was being proposed, I hope this auditorium would be filled with people. But again, you have to be careful. What we've done is we're trying to weaponize history. And both the Republicans and the Democrats are guilty of that. And I've heard so much criticism about 1619, but I'm just as appalled at what happened on January 6th. And there's people who believe, well, that was simply a walk through the park in the Capitol. So I think we have to stop weaponizing history. And I think we have to look at all points of view and be diligent. And if you think that there's something going to happen, get in here and let us know. Appreciate what you have to say.
I brought another book that I think you would like by Jacob Needleman. It's called The American Soul, Remythologizing the Wisdom of the Founders.
Okay.
And his basic premise is, the wisdom of history flowed through our founders and our nation. Just because that happens in a country doesn't mean that all the people in it will always live up to that. And it's naive to think that. We're human beings. So anyway, thank you
so much.
for your comments.
Thank you.
Moving to the next, we have buildings and grounds. Mr. Kreisler.
Buildings and Grounds Committee last met on June 10th. There were
Thank
no
you, whoever
agenda
that
topics.
was. Commented, I wonder who that was.
No public comment.
Thank
The next meeting of the Buildings and Grounds Committee will be scheduled for Thursday, July 15th, immediately following the 6 p.m. regular board meeting in the high school auditorium or via Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Kreiser. Moving on to finance. Ms. Hudson, for
Ms. Fisher is back,
Ms. Fisher is back.
back on.
All right, Ms. Fisher. Christina, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. The Finance Committee met on June 10th, and the board reviewed a sponsorship agreement with GS Signs in the amount of $15,000 for a 10-year term commencing August 1st, 2021 through August 1st, 2031, in preparation of a motion for tonight's regular board meeting. The board also reviewed the 21-22 Lancaster Lebanon Public Schools joint purchasing bids as listed in preparation of a motion at tonight's regular board meeting. We also reviewed the 21-22 special education tuition contracts, which will be a motion at tonight's board meeting as well. And with that being said, I would like to make a motion to approve the Finance Committee items as noted on the Finance Consent Agenda.
I have a motion to approve the Finance Committee items as noted on the Finance Consent Agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kreiser. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And thank you, Mr. Putt. I just can't see down far enough. The next meeting for the Finance Committee, I believe, will be on July 8th after the regular board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
That's July, it's July 15th.
Okay, July 15th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to staffing and administration, Mr. Guy.
Okay, staffing administration met on June 10th. We confirmed receipt of Act 44 annual school safety report. There was no public comment, and out of that, the following motion. A motion to approve staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda. Dr. Kepler, do you want to make any comments?
Certainly. You'll see on your staffing and administration agenda tonight, professional staff tenure based on school code, retirement payment based on contract, employment of Cynthia Lyons as a long-term substitute for the coming school year, an associated mentor. Resignations, I'd like to thank Sarah Wagner, longtime Spanish teacher for us here at the high school, is resigning, as is Jennifer Ebersol, elementary autistic. Thank them for their service to our students. This was in addition to Sense Committee. We have our final hire for summer tech help in a recent graduate, Stephen Kleinfelder. Resignation in our girls lacrosse program as an assistant coach. Coach hire within our girls soccer program, Mara Bowman, former Palmyra Cougar herself, and volunteer coach, former Palmyra Cougar field hockey player, Aaron Huffman.
Let me read the motion again.
Did you already make the motion?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I have a motion to approve the staffing and administration committee items as noted on the staffing and administration consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Hudson. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, the next staffing and administration meeting will take place on June 24th. Better than not.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Moving on to reports, superintendent's reports.
Thank you, Mr. Putt. I have a brief report for you tonight. Just simply saying congratulations to the class of 2021. Prior to graduation at Buck Swank Stadium on June 8th, the senior class trip to Promised Land State Park in the Poconos was held on June 1st. The senior awards night was held on June 3rd. I think it was a nice ending to the school year and a congratulatory send-off to our class of 2021. I'd like to also point out this past year, although it's not a direct affiliated school club, The 2021 Krypton Cougars, who do a remarkable job every year. I think it's the second year in a row that they went to Worlds and placed 11th this year in the Infinite Recharge First Robotics competition. They also won the Autonomous Award at that event. It's an impressive group of students. Works on robotics and programming. It's amazing when you get to see what they see. We were able to stream, I believe it was the 2020 championship here at school, and it had the flavor of like MMA, the excitement in the room with these robots kind of pushing and shoving and fighting to do what their task was that year. It was pretty impressive. I mean, there was a lot of excitement in the room, so we congratulate that group. I share with you our enrollment at the last day of school. There you see our next year's sophomores, huge group, 331 strong, ending the freshman year. We expect these numbers to increase with many students coming back to us from homeschooling and or cyber schools. And summer's programming for high school students begins June 28th. Middle school and elementary will follow, and Dr. Spagnolo has a more formalized update for you tonight in curriculum committee. Outside of the student realm, direct student realm, summer meal bundles for all children under age 18 that do not attend in-person programs or receive free meals elsewhere are available for curbside pickup meals 3:30 to 4:30 on Wednesdays at Lingle Avenue Elementary. We're running that every Wednesday through August 18th. Weekly RSVP is required and families would have received this information. But to just give you an idea, one bag contains 7 breakfasts, 7 lunches, or 14 meals, and we gave out over 300 bags the first Wednesday, June 16th. And then yesterday, I didn't get an update on how yesterday went. I was there for the first one, and I left needing a shower. It was warm and fast-paced. But to give you an idea, that many meals, they're all paid for currently through the federal government. It helps us keep our food service budget out of the red. And that one day alone was $10,500 worth of revenue into our food service budget by providing meals to families. It's not based on income. Anybody can get one if they're aged newborn to 18 years of age that live in our school district. So pass the word, more people that we can get food to, the better. And it helps our bottom line as well. And thank you to the team that makes that possible. And just a reminder and an update, the district administration is waiting our final report for the natatorium feasibility study. That should be coming to us here in the very near future. And also to let you know that we have supplied the Pennsylvania Economy League information requested for the enrollment study. So they have everything they need to start their work. And then you see our upcoming events, one board meeting in July on the 15th. And then before you know it, new teacher induction and the start of the school year. That concludes my report.
Dr. Kepler, since you talked about graduation, I just wanted to make a point here that in the 60 years that I've been part of this district, either as a student, teacher, or board member, I never saw the football field thicker or greener. I think that our maintenance staff has done a tremendous job. I also think that our turf fields have taken a lot of the stress off the football field. So hopefully we'll have grass in September.
I will pass on the word. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Dr. Kepler. I don't suspect they have a student rep here this evening. No?
Graduated.
Yeah. So the CTC, nothing really to report. I'd like to pass on some sad news. Ben Donor, who is the representative to the CTC from Anvil, Cleona, passed away, I believe, Tuesday evening or Wednesday. I think we got the news. Very sad. I worked with Ben for the last 2.5 years, and just a really, really nice guy, and will be very much missed at the board meetings. So it's very, very sad. Sorry. Moving on to the Parks and Rec.
I was unable to attend. I was a client in Little Rock, Arkansas. I did review the packet that Tina provided. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Summer camps rolling along, and fiscally it's in good shape.
Thank you. The IU13 report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Putt. The IU13 board met on June 16th. We had business as usual and approved over $17 million in disbursements to the various committees. The highlight of the meeting is that the IU13 is gearing up for the extended school year program, ESY. And we do have a little fun fact to share here that starting in late June, nearly 750 students from Lancaster and Lebanon counties will participate in the IU13's ESY program. And it is a 5-week summer program that operates successfully thanks to a team of over 320 staff members that are returning. So that is my IU13 report. Thank you very much.
Next is the Cougar Foundation. Okay. Palmyra area library report.
Right, we had a meeting last week. Again, as the COVID restrictions are being loosened, the library is trying to get back into the mainstream of things. Right now, we have over 200 children involved in the summer reading program, and they had a Forgotten Friend reptile virtual program in which we had 638 children participating. So that's pretty much what we're doing.
Thank you, Larry. The Tax Collection Committee.
That committee meets quarterly, and there has not been a meeting since my last report.
Okay. Legislative Region Report. I think that's Susan. Diversity, equity.
I could at least report that
What's that?
we're waiting for the final budget still. So hopefully by the next meeting, Susan will likely have a budget on an update on the state budget.
Okay.
I think everyone expected to have prior to now, but it is due by June 30th.
Okay. The Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee.
Yeah, we discussed really the outcome of the training that was facilitated for over 220 faculty and staff. The last meeting, so I won't go into that. Now we're just looking at the assessment, feedback from that to see how we build on the program.
Okay. Any other reports? I don't think there are any other reports. Okay. Communications. No communications. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn. Move into our regular meetings. First up is curriculum. Surprising.
So we have a presentation on retention failures.
Yeah, so this evening, thank you. This evening, we have an update of our students and how we have the retention and the failures for this year. I'm proud to say that our elementary, we have no students that have failed. However, there are 1 or 2 students at Lingle that families are still in conversation with administrators to determine whether, as parents, they want their child to be retained. Middle school, 6th grade, there were 9 failures. However, with summer school, they do not expect any of their students to be retained, that they will all do their summer work and will be passed to 7th grade. Our 7th grade, we had 11 students who failed. There is 1 7th grade student that is going to be retained due to a parent request. And then for 8th grade, we had 13 students that did not meet the requirements to pass 8th grade. We believe with summer school, we will still have 4 8th graders that will be retained. 1 of those is by parent request. When you get to the high school, you're talking more about credit recovery. And when you're looking at, there were 64 students who did not pass 4 or more classes. And when you think of high school, you have 5 classes in the fall and 5 classes in the spring. So out of 10 total classes for 9th through 12th grade, 64 students did not meet the requirement. So they are not credit ready to move on to the next grade. There's 25 students that failed 3 classes, and there's 35 that failed at least 2 classes. Now, I will be, in my next presentation, we'll be talking about our summer school and how robust we have increased it this year to provide opportunities for those students to gain their credits back.
Dr. Spagnola, can you give us any idea how these numbers compare to a typical year if such a thing exists?
I don't have the exact numbers for that because I did not ask that last year. That's a good question. I will say that of the students that failed this year, the majority of those were students that were synchronous most of the year or chose to do Cougar Academy but did not do any of the work.
So if you're going to do a comparison, I wouldn't suggest using last year either.
Right, because it was.
I would use 2 years ago, but that would be helpful for me to see these numbers troubling.
I can certainly ask for that information.
I can speak to the middle schools on an annual basis in a typical year, and we actually even did it this year. Dr. Spagnola and I and my predecessor and I before that meet with the middle school administration and review specific student situations and talk about options and meeting the criteria, summer school option. And these numbers are slightly higher at the middle level, not exceedingly higher. High school, I don't have that comparison data.
I will say with every student that's failed, there were multiple attempts by counselors, teachers, administrators, our social workers trying to go do home visits, that there was a great deal of interaction from families. Some of the families responded to our teachers and our counselors, and others did not respond to any emails, voicemails, messages at their homes. So that was unfortunate.
And mine isn't an issue of blame, right? I'm
Right.
sure people did their jobs, but there's a simple reality of you have 125 high school kids who failed 2 or more classes. That is a significant number. And I'm confident there are a variety of factors for why it happened or didn't happen or whatever. But it is what it is, right? And so it's a problem. So how, credit recovery is a great idea, all of that. But we also heard, a fairly emotional story this evening of the impact this had on a variety of families who maybe had not experienced this before. So just guide what we do going forward. Absolutely.
And I'll be able to share in my next presentation what we're doing for those families that are different this year than what we've offered in the past.
Thank you.
So you are welcome. The next presentation I have is on our summer school opportunities. This year, every year we offer summer school opportunities. This year at the elementary level, there are 2 options. We have our traditional CUB program where our students come in face-to-face for additional math and reading support. And we also added a technology-based enrichment option for students that have teachers. We've always provided the online options for the summer, but we didn't have a teacher attached to that where they can interact with the students and the families. So if you look at the first chart, that is our CUBS program. By grade level, I have it spelled out that we have 12 kindergartners that are doing reading only, 11 first graders doing reading only, 9 second graders, 5 third graders, 1 fourth grader. 5th grade is combined with the middle school because we're doing a remediation 5th grade plus a preview of 6th grade at the same time. So we have them lumped into our middle school population. For math, we had 3 4th graders that were interested in math only. And then the 3rd column talks about the same students that are doing both. Math is going to be, or reading is going to be Mondays and Wednesdays, and math are Tuesdays and Thursday opportunities for our students. So a total of 167 students that are going to participate or have already signed up for a program. Our parents are asked to pay $10 as a hold fee, and at the end of CUBS program, that money is given back to the family. It just gives us a reassurance of the number we can count so we can hire staff and have the amount of personnel that is needed to support our students. This program will be held at Lingle Elementary School this summer, and the food lunch program that Dr. Kepler had spoke about earlier, those students will go home on Wednesdays with the amount of food that Dr. Kepler. So our little ones, the parents obviously will have to help because they're pretty heavy bags. The instructional delivery model is a little different than we did in the past. We used to have all in person. This year we gave it an option to say, of the students that are doing the reading and the math program, do you want your child in person or would you rather your child learn virtually? So this is the breakdown. It's still the same number of students, 167. We just broke down how many families felt comfortable or were able to transport their child to Lingle Elementary School, and the families that still want their child to get the extra support, but do it virtually. I added the staffing. We will have 11 teachers involved, and we will have one director, which the director is more like a person to make sure everybody is where they need to be, make sure their parent drop off and parent pickup is done in a safe manner. So then our elementary technology-based enrichment option, which was option 2, will have 3 or 4 reading programs. It will have Reading Eggs. It will have Raz Kids, Study Island ELA, which is reading, and Study Island Math. So when we talk about those things, the programs, Reading Eggs is really a program for enrichment. Students can go on and read stories and answer questions, and there's a teacher that tracks them and has them progress. Raz Kids is very similar. Study Island is a program that our students use throughout the year, and there's benchmark assessments, very similar to what's expected on the PSSA. So there's individual standards that the students can practice. And again, there will be staff there helping them. To date, those programs, they kind of start whenever because they're programs that the students have had all year through their Clever login system. And to date, we have several 3rd through 5th graders in math that have already completed the next year's instruction. So this is not just about remediation, it's also about enriching students and giving opportunities to move forward. Our summer school, middle school, as Dr. Kepler mentioned earlier, they are starting later, so we don't have the exact numbers right now, but for the Study Island and ELA and math, we have 15 total students that are signed up for that. For our Keystone credit course recovery, we have 9 students already enrolled in 14 classes, and we're waiting to hear back from 17 other students because the deadline has not come yet. So we're on that. The deadline is Monday. And then with our high school students, we have 60 students that were awarded a $400 scholarship to take a credit recovery course through either the Keystone K-12 online cyber courses or our district creative online courses. Generally, summer school is paid 100% by the families. And this year with our ESSER 2 or ESSER 3 monies, we were able to purchase some of those programs. And of course, through Keystone is anywhere from $280 to $435 a course. We will also have teachers in the building that will help these students. So anybody that was awarded a scholarship has agreed to come in person to take the classes, because we find that there is a direct correlation between students taking summer school courses, which would be in person with a staff member versus doing it on their own independently. So as a district, if we were going to fork out the money for the courses, we felt it was very important for the students to be in the building. There are 80 overall students taking summer classes. So if you read that, 20 students have agreed to pay anywhere from $280 to $425 for the course, but they're taking it at home. So that was an option, but parents were would need to pay for that.
Is that 80 unique students?
80 what?
Unique students?
Individual students, yes.
So we've still got a gap of 60?
Yes. And there are some, yes, yes.
45. So if other students in that high school cohort, the 125 students, if others wanted to, are there additional funds available for them to take courses?
Yes. We actually had given a money limit of 50 students, but for all of those of you that know KK, Dr. Knutson, she likes to push the limit a little bit, and there was a need, and so she asked, and Dr. Kepler was able to find additional funds. So yes.
The learning loss provision of the ESSER 3 funds is our priority. So if more students want to sign up, we'll fund it.
And some of those failures, I might add, are maybe students with an IEP or a need that they pass through their IEP goals. So their credit recovery may look different than what we're providing here. And it's also fair to say that if there were any freshmen that may have failed, they still have summer after their sophomore year and junior year to do credit recovery as well.
Do we know the breakdown of the kids that fail the classes? I mean, do we have a breakdown? Do we know how many of those kids may have a longer period of time to recover?
I had the breakdown in my prior slide.
I don't think you had it by grade.
At high school, I did not, but I could ask that from Dr. Richardson.
That would help us understand the delta of the folks who didn't sign up for the
exactly.
Keystone opportunity.
I would also worry more that we're seeing students falling behind with the likelihood of retention. As students, it's going to become problematic.
And the other thing I do want to say, which kind of adds to your concern, is that we did notice that several students that passed at a lower percentage than what we've seen in the past. So say they might have gotten a 60% on their class, so they learned 60% of the material versus the year before it might have been in the 80%. So we are noticing that our teachers are going to have to do some preview, review, take students from where they are at the beginning of September and move them through. So we don't believe that this year of COVID and the 3-year of the continuity of education, as Kirsten talked about, we do believe that there's still work to be done to bridge that gap from where we are. But in all honesty, I'm very pleased with what we've seen, because in January, these numbers were way higher.
To add some further perspective to but I think your question was, Mr. Corian, when you have that many failures, there's a backlog in trying to get into courses, et cetera. Our high school administration, Mr. Reisinger specifically, working through scheduling, and to date, we're able to meet that demand.
Thank you. I guess I do have one more question. You were talking about the fact that the disbursement of grades might not be your typical bell curve or whatever. I don't think it is a bell curve anyways, but are we able to identify, does it look consistent with other years? Or do we have students who were able to achieve at a high level over here, and then a whole bunch of people over here? Because that also is going to impact the classroom.
Correct. And I honestly don't have the answer to that right now. I will say unsupported data by IE teachers speaking that they felt that the grades overall were lower. Now, your higher achievers in the mid-90s to 100, those kids they'll succeed regardless of what type of instruction they're having, for the most part. For some teachers that I spoke to, I had a math in service the last 2 days, and some of the comments were, they were just talking about more pre-testing and things like that, because they didn't feel some of the students mastered the material as much as they may have done in the past.
And again, I just worry about what the classroom is going to look like for all of the students in there, you're going to have to do some work
Correct.
to bring the students at the lower end up. But that then means the students who might be the higher achieving students have to wait. And so again, I just encourage you to look at all of this. You know, I think you guys have some good plans here. I think of it from a college perspective, where you have some students who come from high schools that prepare, and you have some kids who come from high schools who didn't, who had A's. And teaching to that gap can be a real challenge for our teachers.
Absolutely. I'd just say that a different way. I think while I would like to see this data, it's probably more important to get it in front of the teachers.
Any other questions? That's all I have for the curriculum.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did we go back to see if there were any?
I do.
He asked me
have-
to just help to tell you that he stepped out for a second. So
Sure.
if there is no public comment,
Well,
then you're.
we do have some people signed up for public comment. I'm not sure where they want to comment. Ms. Bucks?
I was
SA?
waiting till the health and safety plan was revealed.
Okay. Laura Weidler?
I think you covered most things. I just wanted to also comment, a spin-off of what you mentioned, Mr. Corian. I'm concerned too for the students that didn't have the support and maybe are behind. As a parent and observation of my own children who are in elementary school, who were not challenged because there was a struggle there. So I know I do realize we have to play some catch up. Most certainly we do. But we're also losing potential because it's difficult for teachers to teach to different children's capabilities. But I understand that there are teachers that do. And I know we've been asking a lot of our teachers, but if we could simply just ask that of them as well, be mindful of the students where we're losing potential from them. Because when they are challenged, they're not going to be prepared for the stamina and the perseverance for sitting in academics.
Yeah, there's certainly a transition period there. One of the challenge we're talking about is not a new one.
Yeah.
It's just been exacerbated by a pandemic and what happened with instruction. A good factor. Our elementary teachers, more than any, are accustomed to meeting students at different levels and having small groups, reading groups that meet on level and math groups that read on level. We've already started emptying trailers and bringing furniture back in that will allow for that small group setting to take place. Our vision is that we're going to be able to return to that model where we're meeting students where they're at. So if there's a group of accelerated math students in that 4th grade classroom, for example, that teacher's able to meet with that group of accelerated math kids as part of a mini lesson, to keep pushing them and moving them forward, and then having their groups with other student levels.
Yes, I hope so. That would be great. Just looking at comparing also my elementary students, what one was doing at a 2nd grade level versus now, etc. I am concerned, but we'll wait and see.
And we did, for parents that are with us tonight, we did a presentation to this board, I want to say maybe March, spring, where we do curriculum-based assessments. So we were able to see how are our students doing after 3 months of continuity of education and then the year we had this past year. And the data we had from the fall, comparing fall of this past year to fall the previous year, the gap was immense. And the data as we went through and tested January, February, we weren't there, but the gap was closed significantly. So I share with you that we have some measures that we've been looking at that and making sure where are kids on these consistent measures and comparing data from previous years. The data looked promising as the year went on, but to everybody's point, clearly more work to do.
Could I ask one question? Is ESSR is expiring this year, is that correct?
No, the ESSER 2 monies are good through 22-23. ESSER 3 monies. They're just rolling that out. We haven't even submitted the grant yet. They're good through 23, 24.
Thank you. Okay.
And just to add to your concern, that was one of the reasons why we had the elementary enrichment options this summer for summer school, where we added RAS Kids, Study Island ELA, and Study Island Math. Your children are able to go in and work with the current grade level they're on, and then it moves them as to what their levels are. So if you're worried about that, you know, again, it's not an end all be all, but for the summer, that is why we added enrichment as well, so that families that felt like their child might not have gotten exactly where they wanted to be, that they have that access. So if you're interested in that and did not sign up and you want to send me an email, I'd be glad to put you in touch with the people. Your children already know how to get in because it's their Clever account, so they can go in and get started as well. Again, it's not the end all be all, but it helps a little bit.
Gregory Ott.
Yes, I just have a question. To what extent is curriculum information available to the public?
There is a board policy drives that. I can look that up for you and share that with you. Request anything that community member wants to see access to our written curriculum, they would have access to that.
It's not available online?
It is not currently, no.
Okay, so I would have to make an application.
We have an online system that we can print that out and provide it to a stakeholder.
So there's, excuse me, so every course, every syllabi, every 7 learning objectives.
Correct.
Can be accessed by that.
That's correct.
Dr. Kepler, the high school curriculum handbook that students use, that is available online. So the course book that high school students, when they're making their selections, that is online on the website.
So that would have syllabi in it as well?
That would not, but if you're looking for, instead of just I guess what I'm getting at, instead of giving them an ask for all curriculum, maybe you could look there first and determine the specific courses that you would make the ask, only because I imagine it will be a burdensome request if you ask for all of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it would also have course description, which would give you a general idea of what the focus of that course would be.
Yeah, and then within our curriculum system, it's much more detailed than that. If there's specific courses of interest.
Okay. Mandy Braden, I'm going to guess that you're waiting until you roll out
That would be correct.
the magical new. Okay. All right, and that's all the public comment we have. So moving on to staffing and administration.
Right. First item there is board policy. Recommend to approve the second reading of board policy 246, which is school wellness.
Yes, there's been no changes since the first reading. Shared with you the definition of triennial report. There was a question on that. It's a specific state review assessment tool within food service. So it's a pretty standard matter. And this policy recommendation is simply providing a policy that we have to, at a minimum, review this every 3 years.
Second item is PSBA voting delegates. There's, I believe, an attachment there and a 2-page letter.
Yes, that ultimately as a board with membership at PSBA, you have an ability to appoint 2 delegates, as we are a third-class school district. That upcoming in October is the delegate assembly. Through appointment of 2 delegates, you as a board have an ability to cast a vote. The PSBA correspondence has the responsibilities listed there. You would be the appointed board member. You would receive reports from the PSBA president, CEO, and treasurer. You would receive the election results on behalf of PSBA and share with the board here. You would be the representative of this board to consider proposals recommended by the PSB Platform Committee and help them adopt their legislative platform for the coming year. And you would represent this board, consider and act upon any proposed changes to PSBA bylaws. So again, district of the third class, you can appoint up to 2 delegates that would have the ability to vote on behalf of this board. So if you have any interest in serving in that capacity, to let us know. And then
It was Christine and I believe, the last 2 years.
So moved.
No. I don't know that I can make it if it's now on a Saturday, but that is, I think, a valuable session. I've gone to the last 2 years. PSBA does a ton of lobbying to the General Assembly. The platforms, I know, coming into COVID had a lot to do with student, all the things we've been talking about, students' mental capabilities to return to work after, or to return to school after a pandemic. And they were supporting a platform of mental health in general for kids that we voted on the last time. So I would hope the district would find 2 folks willing to go. I have gone the last 2 years, so if someone else is interested.
The assembly is also offered in an online format, so you have an option if that helps you.
It's on a Saturday, is the issue, during the fall.
Yes. Know where you'll be.
Okay. Item number 3 is 2021-22 Health and Safety Plan. And there's an attachment there.
There's an attachment. I'm going to take you to a link first. Superintendents, we received this correspondence from the Department of Education on June 11th. It's also listed on their website. That I'll highlight to you. The second paragraph, that following June 28th, that after the current masking order ends, LEAs, we the school district, have the authority to determine our own masking policy. So I wanted to first start there. The authority is yours, the board, okay? This template's provided to us. It differs from the health and safety plan template that we used in the current school year. I'll get right to the parts where we fill in. So what we're asked to state. So I'm presenting to you a proposal. My recommendation is that this is in committee tonight. Revisions and would be before you for a vote at the July 15th board meeting, making this effective on July 16th. As this has to be posted on our website prior to July 30th. Having only one board meeting in July, we know our timeline. Ultimately, how will the LEA, to the greatest extent practical, support prevention and mitigation policies in line with up-to-date guidance from the CDC? So again, I'm saying that we will continue to support prevention and mitigation policies. To me, that makes sense. We want this to be as safe as possible for all involved. We'll continue to clean and disinfect facilities on a daily basis, and as normal or more thorough or frequent cleaning taking place as needed. We'll continue to maintain seating charts. Contact tracing is one of the pieces that's most in limbo for me. I'm awaiting further direction of what expectations are there. But we'll be poised, should we be required to contact trace by maintaining seating charts and social distance to the extent possible. But our intent is to have kids interact, to be social, and learn together as children. Daily hygiene practices, that just makes sense. We wash our hands before we eat, we wash our hands after recess, etc. Everybody will continue to help teach a proper sneezing technique. Never thought I'd be talking about that at a school board meeting. We will encourage people to continue symptom screening before school or coming to work if they're an employee. We'll operate our ventilation practices as we do now to at or above system standards. And where applicable, our sneeze guards will remain as part of our regular mitigation practices. How will we ensure continuity of services? We talked about this. It is our intent, as this reads, that we're to provide a 2-tier model for next year, that kindergarten through 12th grade in school 5 days a week. So if you want to come to school, we're here every day. That our online option would be our Cougar Academy for families interested in an online option. Our intent is not to continue the synchronous model that we had this year. It's frankly not fair to the kids sitting in the seats in school. Our teachers need to be able to focus on the kids in front of them, and that's our intent. Again, as stated here, additional learning loss-based instruction will be provided throughout the summer of 2021. We're looking at summer 2022 as well. In terms of social, emotional, mental health needs, for those of you that haven't heard in our previous board meetings, we've always partnered with PA Counseling, where they have one school-based counselor in our schools working with students. It basically is a service model where they come in instead of a parent having to leave work, pick up a child, drive to an appointment, receive services, drive back, the student missed more school, that the services are provided privately right in the school. Through stimulus monies, this board's been presented with a proposal to add an additional school-based counselor through PA Counseling, so we'll be able to serve more students. And then an additional position that's contracted to help with that truancy model, to help with the reintegration of kids back into school, to work with families on needs and the emotional needs literally for some students, getting them through our doors. We expect some of that in that position to help that from a social, emotional, mental health based perspective. And that is a Check and Connect program through PA Counseling. Again, food service is listed here as a continuation. At this point, it's our understanding that the federal government is continuing to operate in the free meals program for next school year. So student meals will be provided. Encourage your children to pick up a student meal each and every day, breakfast and lunch. And here's where
Dr. Kepler, will there be hot meal service? I know that was something the kids missed. You know, you could only eat so many ham and turkey sandwiches every day.
there were hot meal services, but they were much more limited than usual. So the intent is to get back closer to our normal operating practice there.
I know our cafeteria does a really nice job with student meals, and I'd like to see us get closer to that.
Yes, that's the intent. That's what's going to help us meet our bottom line. For those, food service is a standalone budget that must maintain itself. It's self-funding. So the better service we can provide, the better for us financially. The part you've all been waiting for. Tried to copy some language here from the CDC. So again, CDC states that cloth masks offer some protection to the individual wearing them. Certainly if that's the case, then on a voluntary basis where a face covering can be used to help protect them from breathing in the virus. So individual students or staff may, on a voluntary basis, wear a mask. We'll maintain the practice that facial coverings or masks may be worn voluntarily. For the school year, we will continue to monitor the ever-changing and applicable requirements or guidelines from the Commonwealth or to the CDC that are effective on or after the posting of this plan on July 30th. Basically, what I'm saying is this could ebb and flow, that I think we have to revisit that, look at it throughout the year, and based on any applicable changes, where we're at. If there are any changes to those requirements, the district will review the requirements and publicly discuss the plan. So we'll be back in this venue if there were any changes to discuss. But very clearly, I feel we're stating there a recommendation of if you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Okay. Facilities, maintaining sneeze guards, additional seating where applicable to just make sense to maintain, enhance social distancing where we can. But again, we envision learning taking place in small groups. Kids smiling, talking, playing, recess, what we know school to have been, we want it back. But again, social distancing in classrooms will occur to the extent possible to educate students in person 5 days a week. So what we're saying is, we're inviting all our kids back. Our classrooms are going to be at capacity. We want kids in school and we want them learning. Under hand washing, again, students and staff will be encouraged to wash hands frequently before and after eating, etc., before and after restroom. Hopefully nothing different than we did before COVID. Cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities and ventilation I have there. Our ventilation systems exceed industry standards. We intend to hold activities and events outdoors when you can, but otherwise we'll be operating as normal. Contact tracing. My feeling for tonight is that we'll use state and federal guidelines to determine when an isolated or quarantined staff member, student, or visitor may return to school. Still unclear as to what's taking place there and what our requirements are going to be come August.
Dr. Kepler, will that differ whether a person has been vaccinated or not vaccinated?
The current standards are, yes, if you're vaccinated and are symptom-free, you do not need to quarantine. That's correct.
I know I'm stepping into it asking this question, but are we able to ask if students have been vaccinated?
No,
That's-
HIPAA violation.
We
I would
get
check with our
health records
solicitor.
for a variety of things that are required.
Sure.
And so if you could check on that from our solicitor, I would appreciate that.
Under diagnostic and screening testing, I mentioned earlier, again, we'll continue to ask families as we did this year to pre-screen before coming to school. And any diagnostic testing or positive test results. The assumption is that if somebody tests positive, they're going to have to quarantine as per Department of Health guidelines. Efforts to provide vaccinations at school. I made it very clear in 2 different correspondences to families that we provided some resources to families, feeling that that is your choice as a family, whether you have your child vaccinated or not. This plan asks us to show where we've done our due diligence and provide information. And again, I'll reiterate that I believe that is your choice as families to make those decisions for your son or daughter, or with your son and daughter.
So our obligation there is simply to communicate opportunities.
That's correct.
Are you funded to do that?
I'm sorry?
There'll be a time for public comment if you sign up for public comment. That's when it's appropriate.
Under accommodations for students with disabilities, and again, as appropriate, we have and will continue to work with students with disabilities on alternatives, whether it's alternatives to face masks, if they want to wear one, face mask, face shield. For students with a disability, we provide alternatives and accommodations through their IEP, and we'll continue to work with families as they make those choices. And then coordination with state and local health officials, and as we did all year, we'll continue to coordinate, met with local and state agencies frequently throughout the school year, and we'll continue to partner as necessary. So as you can see, the template health and safety plan for 21-22 is very condensed. I think it's sending the message of what is expected in the 21-22 school year. There's been a lot of question as to finances tied to masks. No information from the Commonwealth about any state funding being tied to mask wearing. I have no concerns there whatsoever. We have an email from them that says that is our choice locally. From the federal government, there's some communication regarding the ESSER 3 fund, which is significant, $2.45 million to our school district alone. My understanding is, as I sit here before you tonight, is that we have to have a plan. The CDC's language says should. It does not say shall. It's our full understanding, and talking with our solicitor as well, that the power is held locally on this decision. So hence the recommendation to you tonight.
We have that in writing from the solicitor.
I can get that.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Okay, then we have the final item, emergency instructional time template and section 520.1.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. This practice is cautionary. For the previous school year, 2021, online instruction was new. School code dates back to 1949. Computers didn't exist. School code very clearly states it's more about seat time and seat hours, that a student had to be in school. 900 hours for an elementary student, 990 hours for a secondary student. The state authorized last year under section 520.1 to allow basically online options to serve as time in the school year. To position us, should something happen during the year, it's my recommendation that we adopt this resolution again. It basically provides an opportunity to allow, should schools get forced to close, we're positioned to do what we need to do to continue to educate kids. If absent this, we wouldn't be able to do that. So my recommendation is that we authorize that 520.1 again. That basically we're guaranteeing from August 30th to June 7th, we will have 180 days of school and use remote learning as and only if pushed in that direction through necessity. I want to emphasize again, that is not our intent. Our intent is to deliver instruction in school. Okay. And we just have to state why and how we would do that. As we did, we provided access points for students that needed internet access at home. We provide one-to-one devices. We had attendance practices, how we handled attendance for when students were at home. And we had to affirm that the school calendar, academic schedule meet Chapter 4, that we allow sufficient instructional time. We're affirming that we would continue to meet these. That 900 hours, 990 hours would be met. That time is devoted to instructional activities. We would have systems for tracking attendance if that had to occur. That we understand we would need to meet free and appropriate public education under IDEA, federal law. We would need our ESL services for students that have English as a second language. And we would, again, continue to evaluate the quality and outcomes of instructional delivery across all learners. So that this resolution simply allows us to go there should it happen at this, on a dime. Okay.
And this provision only relates to COVID-19.
That's correct. It's authorized for one more year at this time.
So the snow day conversation is not part of this template.
The snow day conversation is different. The snow day conversation, the board,
about it now.
I don't want to go there, but we haven't approved.
I think we're gonna have a ton of public comment. We can keep things moving, but I just wanted to clarify for the audience, this is not the snow day thing.
No,
So-
that's
different.
That's approved for another year, 2 years, actually.
And we still have our own flexibility there, so.
For 5 days.
To the extent we want to give the kids a snow day, we give them. To the extent we get 45 inches of snow and we don't want to have 15 snow days, we have the ability to go to COE.
That's correct. So that concludes my health and safety plan draft 2.
Do we have to pass that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
Okay, public comment?
Okay. Faith?
Do you want me to come up or sit here? What-
That would be fine, doesn't matter.
Okay,
Whichever one you feel more comfortable.
sure. Okay, so I do have, am I allowed to just ask questions or should I just make a presentation?
Let's try and keep it about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, oh, I won't go over that. So my name's Faith Bucks. I have 3 boys. I'm blessed to be their mom. My oldest graduated in 2020 as valedictorian, which is awesome. My middle boy is a freshman. He just graduated freshman year in high school. And my elementary kiddo just graduated 5th grade. And each of them had their own experiences this year with COVID and all that went through it. My college kid came home because he described college as a prison. So he was home half the semester, still doing online, did amazing in his classes, won the freshman award of something or another for being great. My freshman in high school looked like a zombie most days when he did online learning and got done with that, and definitely dealt with depression-like symptoms all year. My elementary kiddo suffered the worst. His anxiety level, I can't even describe to you what we had to do. I thought I would have to pull him out of school the last 2 weeks. His own words said, "No, Mom, I'm gonna power through. Online learning is not for me." I just wanted to share that experience of what I had on my own end. What I'm actually here for is the hundreds of parents that have reached out to me, either from my office or from my job as township supervisor, or as my new position as a district legislative assistant for our representative. Hundreds of families have reached out to me with similar stories of my own, asking what can we do? I cannot send our kids back with masks again. We just can't do it. We won't do it. We'll have to find a different way. So I'm super happy, along with all of them that I represent who have already texted me saying they're extremely glad to hear that this proposal is on the table. There are some concerns that I have, some questions just in regard to it. Have there been any thoughts, I know you mentioned about vaccines, if the parents choose to not vaccinate their kids, is there any correlation with, will they be segregated or social distancing or called out in any way? Have we given any thought to that, or is there any plan? No, there's no ramifications, or you don't know of any at this point?
We've had no discussions about treating any child differently than the next, regardless of vaccine or not.
Okay, good to hear. I'm assuming if this is voluntary, it will also be voluntary with sports. I don't want to see my wrestlers with masks again. I really don't.
I agree.
I'm sure it's probably preliminary to be asking those questions, but just if there's a way to fight to not have that, I would
Spring
appreciate
sports
it.
was any indication, things changed by the time spring went on too, Faith, that I don't anticipate that need, but.
Okay. And with the social distancing, that was kind of my question with the vaccines. I just don't want to see kids social distance, or I forget who said it tonight, but it would be nice if everyone was just respectful of what their personal choice was and their individual freedom to do that. And I don't know if you were aware, but the Pennsylvania Department of Education Secretary was just in a hearing, and did you see that?
I did not.
He did publicly state that the ESSER monies would not be tied to mask mandate or not. It was just they want a health and safety plan. So
I think their language is more about getting schools back that weren't in.
Yes.
And requiring that of them.
Yes.
So I truly believe we're fine as well.
Okay. And then is there any thought to whether or not the summer school programs will be mask optional?
I'm glad you asked the question, that's my prompt. I intended to talk about that tonight. The 2021 health and safety plan ended June 9th when the school year ended. I believe it was June 10th that the order for, if you're vaccinated, you don't need to wear a mask. June 28th corresponds with the first day of summer school. My recommendation is that we operate under these new guidelines for summer school. Frankly, I think it's a great test case. Much fewer kids in a classroom. It gives us a good, if we have significant problems with 10 kids in a room, it might be good data to have. I don't anticipate that, but my recommendation would be summer school starting June 28th, and we're following state guidelines by allowing voluntary use of masks.
Okay. Also good to hear. And will this plan be made publicly for us to view before you vote on it, or will it only be made publicly after?
No, it'll be posted prior to, yes.
So sometime after this meeting prior to?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the one question that was back here, I'll ask, I forget who yelled it out. She just wanted to know, was the funding was there funding associated with making the vaccine available, known to the parents?
No.
None, okay. All right, thank you so much for your time. I really would hope that you vote to approve this plan and let the health and safety be put back into the parents' hands where it should have been in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mandy Brady.
Hello, good evening. My name is Mandy Braden. I have 4 children in the district. One is in high school, the youngest is in kindergarten. And I am just very encouraged to hear the discussion here tonight regarding the health and safety plan. I had some concerns, and we have some of our own stories, many that I know you all have heard. So I won't go into detail regarding all of that. But I just wanted to come before you tonight and just continue to, as a voice of a parent in the community, to continue to really encourage you all to allow the families to make the choice regarding the health and safety of their students, especially relating to wearing a face covering or not, especially as the COVID-19 cases continue to drop across the Commonwealth, and the state is changing their mask mandate policy. I would love to see the district follow in those footsteps as well. I do want to thank the district and the board for the amount that our kids were in school this past year. That was a huge help to us, especially with having 4 of them and different schedules, and that was just a huge help for our family. I did have one question though, and I believe Dr. Kepler, you touched on it briefly, just not knowing much about the contact tracing and the quarantine periods. But I would assume that 10-day card fell under that contact tracing, and that I'm referring to the 10-day quarantine period that our students would have to have. And we had some struggles there just because it was always sort of a 50-50 bet. If our child went in and tested positive for COVID-19 and had very few symptoms, then the rest of our children all had to come home as well, which was very disruptive to them and their learning. So I was just curious if you have any thoughts on a timeline or when you might know more information regarding those policies.
Sure. My hope is to be able to provide this board an update on the 15th of July when they vote upon a plan, that we would have an idea at that time what we're being told is going to be required there. It's our hope that the Department of Health is the body that does more of that work. Frankly, that work fell on local school districts and providing that information. I have people that are begging that that's not the case moving forward. So ultimately July 15th to approve the plan, but with any of this, it could change frequently throughout as we approach the start of the school year into the winter. It's probably something that we'll be following for the foreseeable future of the school year.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time and your consideration in this matter. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mandy. There is no further comment. And so that is the last of our meeting this evening. I'm going to move to the executive session. Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.